Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rethink Culture. I'm your host, Mila Dushon. Today, I will be speaking with Sejal Thakkar, who is my fabulous guest for today, and we'll be talking about social justice. So let me introduce her a little bit first before we can engage in a conversation. So, Sejal is not your average employment law attorney. Her more than 13 years of experience advising clients, human resources personnel, and legal counsel regarding standard employment practices uncover a need, a personal passion for bringing more proactive, relevant, and impactful workplace training programs to her clients and their teams. Her highly experiential customized workshops tailored to executives, managers, and individual contributors bring the courtroom to the training room in an interactive, engaging environment that favors human stories over compliance checklists. She continues to provide legal counsel, including investigations regarding harassment, discrimination, bullying, retaliation, misconduct, and other topics with the same passion, no matter the context. Her passion for helping clients understand the value of more harmonious workplaces and the path to getting there is always front and center. Welcome to the show, Sejal.
Thank you so much, Mila. Thanks a lot for having me here today. I'm excited.
Now, I'm excited too. I'm excited to have you. it's so fascinating. Your introduction just like screams social justice, and that's the topic that we're touching on today. Social justice. I'm really excited to like deep dive into this. But before we start, I know we have viewers out there listening and viewing from different platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever that you're joining in from. Please say hello to us. Please state your name, which state, which country, which part of the world that you're tuning in from, and just say hi in the comments. And yeah, thank you for being here. And of course, please do not forget to tune in and follow, subscribe on LinkedIn. Well, I've not gone live on LinkedIn. I'm still waiting for the approval. But please do follow on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, so you can follow us on all those platforms for latest stories. But let's get into it, Sejal. I was reading about you on your website, and you've got a very, very interesting story, right? And something that you wrote on your story about bullying truly resonated with me. And you were bullied, you were discriminated at a very young age, as early as elementary school, and I moved into high school. I want to hear your story, your experience, and how it relates so well with our topic, social justice.
Sure. Well, look, I have the pretty typical immigrant story, right? This is actually interesting. This is something very interesting. Is I actually was conceived in India and born in Chicago. So I am completely as marginal as you can imagine. But, growing up, we were the only Indian family in an all Italian neighborhood in Chicago. And so my parents had the accent. They owned convenience stores. It just happened to be right across from the elementary school, which obviously wasn't really fun for me growing up. But, it was rough. Kids are so cruel to each other as it is. Being the only brown person in that town, I stood out. I didn't blend in. And it was this constant narrative that I heard growing up was, just kind of fit in so that you don't stand out, but then the color of your skin makes you stand out. And so I dealt with a lot of bullying growing up. And it really toughened me up into the person that I am today. But I also recognize that I think in these situations, and I decided early on which side I was going to be on. Was I going to be a victim and hate everybody that ever bullied me or treated me or said mean things to me? And yes, I got into fights, and yes, I was, suspended from school for standing up for myself, and
Mm-hmm.
I never took it. I stood up for myself, but was I going to judge everybody and stereotype everybody because of these few people that were doing that to me? And I decided early on that I was not going to be on that side. I was going to be on the side of someone that advocates for social justice.
Mm.
That's been my underlying theme throughout my whole life, in my career choice, finding a space where I can speak for those people that are marginalized or may not have a voice. And that was really one of the reasons why I stopped litigating cases as much, because I always sided with the party that I felt was not being treated fairly or equally.
Mhm.
And I chose to do it in a workplace setting because that was an environment that I could make a difference in. But I got torn as a litigator because, let's say an employee filed a complaint of sexual harassment against a supervisor or a coworker, and there was actual sexual harassment or evidence to support that. Then I wanted to give or try to do what I could to help that person. But as an attorney, I'm supposed to be representing my client, which was usually the employer. I was a defense attorney. And so
Mhm.
I would get this feeling of being torn. And that's where training sort of became my passion, in educating people, because a lot of times people have good intentions, but they just don't know what to do when they're in these situations.
I love that you mentioned people have good intentions, but they do not know what to do in these situations, right? And of course, all intentions are not good intentions because it can manifest and unravel in multiple ways, right? But I love that you mentioned about that. And now, you answered my next question. It's like, what got you into becoming a lawyer? And you expressed, your passion and how it flowed really well. So let's get right into it. Like, for people to truly understand what we're going to be talking about today, about retaliation, about bullying, and having a voice, right? Protecting those voices. Let's start with, what is social justice? And, to some people, a lot of people view it well, they brush it off as a topic pertaining to the legal system. And
Mhm.
most do not even see it as being aligned with every facet of our society:
Yeah.
work, home, groups of friends, schools, religious congregations. So I want to hear your thoughts. What does social justice mean?
Mhm. I love that question. Thank you. And what a great way to get started with our conversation. The way that I define it, and there's a lot of different definitions for it. I actually, I taught a class on social justice at a JFK University, and that's where I really looked at a lot of different definitions. But I use the more simplified version of the definition. And for me, social justice means, doing what I can, to make sure that people have equal opportunity, that they're treated equally, that
Mhm.
they have access to resources. And I do that in a workplace setting. But you're right, this is something that we deal with everywhere. I mean, before I started my company, I worked at UCSF Medical Center here in San Francisco, and I was dealing with social justice in in an educational setting, right? And so it definitely has different impact depending
Mhm.
on which environment you're in, but it's the same no matter where you go. There are certain biases that people have, and that's not a bad thing. It's just, if you have a brain, you've got a bias, period. Okay. I remember one time I was training this class, and a gentleman raised his hand and said, Sejal, well, I don't have any bias. And I go, well, do you have a brain? Because if you have a brain, sorry to break this to you, we all have biases. That's why I don't even
Mhm.
use that word bias when I'm doing my training.
Mhm.
I use the word unconscious belief, because
Mhm.
then people sit with it better.
Mhm.
But really, we have these because it's the way that we've been brought up, our education, our environment, our upbringing, our religions, our culture, everything. It's the lens through which we see the world. And that lens is going to be different for everybody because we are unique and we have different lived experiences. But when it becomes a problem is that when you're not aware of these biases. And look at the media right now. I mean, we're seeing it everywhere. I mean, we could talk
Right.
about current events and we'll be talking for the next 10 hours. But it's when you're not aware of it, that's when it becomes a problem, because then you behave in ways that you're not aware of, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I have a bias against dark skin, if I see somebody with dark skin, and let's say I don't know about that bias, I'm going to act towards that person differently because of that without even knowing it. These are called
Mm-hmm.
micro behaviors or aggressions, right? So I might give that person a dirty look, or I might decide to stand up and go sit somewhere else, or I might not include them in a project that I'm working on because of their color of their skin. But until I'm aware of that, I can't do anything to practice inclusive behaviors, right? And so that's where I've been using my voice to bring my message forward to help those individuals or groups where they are marginalized, to do
Mm-hmm.
what I can to bring social justice in the way that I can.
I absolutely love that. And you mentioned about, without even realizing unconscious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such an important point that you brought up. Like, how many times have, listeners out there, how many times have you, like, touched onto your purse really, really hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you've seen a brown person or a
Yeah.
black person, how many times have you locked your door when a
Mm-hmm.
homeless person stands at an intersection?
Sure.
How many times have we done so many things, right? Like walked away from a person having a beer.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's everywhere in everything we do. I mean, I can give you example after
Mhm.
example. It doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Right,
This
right.
is what I try to tell people. It's people have this thing like there's shame or guilt or some negative opinion about it. And it's not. It's a matter of somewhere along the way it got put into your hardwiring
Hmm.
that that it turns into these spontaneous, these automatic judgments that you make without even thinking about it, just because you see something. So you, on a very limited experience. I mean, this happened to me, right? Do you remember that incident that happened? I think it was like in the middle of, bless you, in the middle of last year sometime. Remember there was this incident, I think it might have been United or Delta, where somebody was dragged off the plane.
Right. Yes. I was going to talk about that. Yes.
Yeah, and the media got all over that issue. It was everywhere. And that was right around the time that I was actually traveling a lot for work. And I remember getting on the plane and I saw a very little, like 2 second interaction between a flight attendant and a passenger on the plane. And I automatically, like, I felt it. I had negative feelings. I'm like, it must be the airline hostess. It's got to be the flight attendant's problem. Like, she's got to be the mean one. She's got to be the one at fault. And it happened spontaneously. I felt it, like my physical like being started to change, and it was all because of everything I'd seen in the media. So I caught myself and I said, Sejal, stop. You don't really know what's going on in that situation. And I didn't say anything about it. I didn't react. And turned out that she was really friendly and nice. But I would have written her off from that immediate 2 second interaction if I didn't know that this is how we react due to our unconscious biases or beliefs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, no, you bring up a really good point. And I want to like transition into the next question as to, what are some principles of social justice so people can really understand why they're from the research that I've been doing, that articles have been saying that there are four interrelated principles of social justice, and you mentioned one of it, equity, right? Another thing is access, participation, and rights. You mentioned about rights as well. And rights is such a trending topic right now, like especially with voting rights, right?
Yeah.
And people don't see it from a very wider, larger lens. People just see social justice as legal system, and that's it. It's not my business. But when we talk about equity and
Mhm.
access and resources, how can that look like, especially from being an employment lawyer?
Well, I mean, it's everywhere. Again, it comes back to these systems were when these systems were created. So if we just talk about the workplace for a second, right?
Mhm.
When these policies and these procedures were developed, right? They were written without all of the voices at that table. So typically speaking, these were written not without taking into concern who might need that. It didn't start off as a level playing field, and that was the problem. So you're expecting people to get access to services, to resources, to promotions, to moving up within the chain of command in a environment where not everybody's starting at the same point. right? And so when you think about, like, here's an example. I was just thinking about like something that I can tell you that I haven't said on any other show, so they'd be something different, right? If you
Mhm.
think about retaliation cases, right? For example, 3 out of 4 people don't report when they're being harassed at work. Okay. So that means if somebody's being harassed in the work environment, let's say I'm at work and let's say somebody's harassing me because of whatever, my religion. Okay. And so they're harassing me. Now, the statistics are clear, and this is backed up. I'm not making up these statistics. 3 out of 4 people do not report because they fear some kind of retaliation
Mhm.
happening in the workplace. But if you think about it, to get somebody of color, of a marginal, a vulnerable population up into higher chains of command, that's hard enough for that person to get there. Now, if that person is going to be harassed, they're less likely to report something going on. That
Mhm.
shows you that when you're already starting at a different playing field and you have to work so hard, you're going to put up with harassment. You're going to put up with discrimination. You're going to put up with bullying more. And
Mhm.
because of that, you're going to have less access to equity, the resources, the support, because people are not going to give that to you because you're not speaking up. You're just putting up with these bad behaviors that are happening,
Right.
right? So it's everywhere within the system. And so the only way it can work is if we start to dismantle that system and start taking a look at the systemic issues. And this is why I decided to not litigate and to train, because I was seeing how companies were handling complaints that were being filed by their employees,
Mhm.
how they were not doing it correctly, right? They were
Right.
band-aids on things rather than addressing the root cause of the problem, right?
I love that you mentioned, people put band-aid on things,
Yeah,
right? And you mentioned another important point as to how does marginalized communities, when they are oppressed, it's harder for them to go up. They just do not report it. They just walk away. And when you walk away, I feel that it's enabling the behavior
that's right.
of the oppressor. Yet, but I know some people don't want to hear this, but and everyone would immediately throw, oh, there's two sides of the story. Yes, there's always two sides of the story, three sides of the story, four sides, however many sides that is, right? To your point of systemic issues, if this is happening more and more, and when colored people are being oppressed and are voicing out, not just colored people, minorities
Mhm.
too, right, are being oppressed, and fear is being instilled into them not to speak up, that eliminates the whole basis of equity
That's right.
and access. And access is just not access to education and access to work. But when you eliminate someone's voice, that person might lose their job, might walk away from their job, losing that paycheck, right?
Absolutely.
That bleeds into an economic problem. And people don't see that. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
They don't. And here's the thing, and I hear this all the time, when I do my trainings is, it's this idea of, well, I am tolerant of differences. I'm tolerant of different perspectives, right? And my thing is, we can't be tolerant. Like, let me say that again. Like, I cannot stress this enough. We can't just expect this problem to solve itself by being tolerant. That does not work. What we need to do is be understanding. There's a huge difference. We have to move people from just being tolerant to understanding that we are going to go beyond just being tolerant. We want to understand each other's differences. I want to hear your perspective. I'm open and willing. So that's the essential agreement, because if we don't get that kind of commitment from everybody, these issues, like we're seeing in the news right now, they're going to continue. So we have to challenge our own biases. We have to be open to having a dialogue. People get into debates. I mean, it's happening everywhere. I was just telling you about what we talked about before we got on the show is people within the same race or within the same religion are starting to attack each other.
Right.
It's not COVID that's going to kill people. I really think it's people that's killing people. I mean, I do. It's like, come on, you know.
And yeah, people have been killing people for
Yeah,
years, for aeons. You mentioned a very, very important point about tolerance, right? And this is something that I've always like touched on, and a lot of my friends disagree with me. But tolerance, I feel that tolerance, it's about when you create this narrative as to like, my tolerance level is 80%. If you go above it, I'm going to burst out. I'm going to yell at you. You know, it's like being tolerant to someone's religion, being tolerant to someone's
Yeah.
behavior. And you highlight a really, really great point. It's not about tolerance. It's about really embracing, right? It's like, when I hear someone being say, "Oh, I'm tolerant to a certain race," I can
Mhm.
only go to certain events with 5 of them.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why are you saying that narrative,
Yeah.
right? What is challenging you? Why is it challenging you?
Yeah, and there's going to be discomfort, and that's the reality, right? It's okay to have discomfort. I think people, when they start feeling discomfort, they don't know how to navigate or cope with that discomfort. So they get uncomfortable, and then they don't want to, they shut down or they withdraw from the conversation. But the essential agreement is that you at least get to the point where you are open to learning about the perspective, have an understanding, commit. And then here's the last piece of it. I think this is the piece that gets lost, is then, and this is what I really focus my trainings around, is then to conduct yourself in a respectful and appropriate manner, especially when there's disagreement. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. That's the commitment you have to make. And so my focus is civility. That's why I call myself the Chief Civility Officer, because when I started getting into training and I looked at diversity and inclusion, that's really where my heart is. I am an advocate for diversity and inclusion. So that's kind of the direction I still go in, and I'm always have an affinity towards that. But when I started going and attending all these diversity and inclusion trainings, one thing really stuck out to me, because I looked at organizations, and I just said this to someone on the phone yesterday, is like, there are companies that are spending a lot of money on their diversity and inclusion efforts. So why are they still getting sued? Why are they still having harassment and discrimination complaints if they're spending all this money and they have good intentions and they really, diversity and inclusion is a core value? Here's why I think it is. It's because they're spending a lot of money on focusing on identity diversity and not cognitive diversity, right? So the way we look, the color of our, the characteristics that we're born with, right? That are part of our lived experiences. So they're spending money on that. But what about this cognitive diversity? The way we think, the way we communicate, the differences in our personality, how we handle conflict. That's where they're not spending the money or need to spend more money to deal with those people to people interactions. And that's why civility, I think, is the key.
I love that you mentioned identity versus cognitive diversity, right? This is a key component that plays in social justice. And whatever happens at home happens in society, happens at work, happens everywhere. That's how culture is. That's how the whole concept of culture is. I love that you mentioned this. Like, a lot of people get challenged in workplaces, even in online, even on online, like on Twitter as well. I don't know if a lot of people have heard this recent story about Amy. Is it Amy Cooper?
Yeah. Oh my God. I have nightmares about that. I could not stop between that and the other video. I'm not even going to get into. I couldn't even watch it. I was just like, what are we doing?
And it's like, I watched that video and then it's like, okay, what happened? I was like trying to think about all the scenario, like how can I humanize this situation? How can I really show empathy for both people? And then I realized, I rewatched the video like 5 times, and then I thought, I finally, I was like, you know what? He was speaking from a very calm, collective. He was saying please. He was not threatening her, and she got so worked up because she was challenged. She was challenged by someone whom she's not been challenged by. So that made me rethink deeper as to how she is at her workplace, how she is in her neighborhood. It's
Yeah,
just not
scary.
her. It's very similar people to her. So, like, who are the other Amy Coopers out there who respond in this way, where something is challenged, and that impacts diversity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was VP. So she's high up in the ranks. And this is the thing, that type of behavior happens more when you get higher up in the chain of command, right? We know that. And they're the ones that hold access to the resources and
Right.
all of the things that impact social justice, right? And so when we get higher up in the chain of command, and this is how somebody asked this question on LinkedIn, I'm going to respond to it later on today, is that how did she get to be VP? How did Amy get to be VP? And I go, there are millions of Amy. There's thousands and thousands of Amy's. Are you kidding me? It happens, and it happens everywhere. I've dealt with so many Amy's and whatever else you want to call them. But the thing is, what happens is, here's what we got to keep in mind. It gets normalized, that behavior. It's not the first time she's done this. Okay, this is not the first time she has shown her privilege and acted out. I mean, she did it in front of a camera. The guy said he was recording her, and she had no problem going on with her act, calling the police and falsely accusing this man of threatening her. That's when it's, that she's done. You don't just get up one day and do that. Like, you've done this in your life repeatedly, and it's become normal. At her organization, she's probably lashed out at people. There's probably been a complaint or two about her, but the company has had her back, like lots of organizations do, because they normalize that behavior.
Right.
And they say it's okay. And so it's got to be about, no, we are not going to normalize that behavior. We are going to make civility a core value of our organization, meaning I don't care where you're from. I don't care what the color of your skin is. I don't care whatever you believe in. But here's the deal. When you walk into the door of this workplace or education or wherever, you have to be civil, treat each other with mutual respect and dignity, no matter what, even if there's conflict. Okay. And then you got to have that be a core value, civility. You got to put resources behind it. You got to put training behind it. It's got to be part of a holistic solution to fix your culture. That's the only way it works.
I love it.
How I'm passionate.
I love it. It's like you're speaking my language, man.
Good. It should be everybody's language. Let's make that happen.
I remember like few months ago, I traveled to Southeast Asia, and I was speaking, and then I got so passionate. And then when I'm passionate, I speak with my body, with my hands and everything, and then I do like weird dances, and I was speaking, and then I was like, culture is a holistic system. It needs to be integrated. Diversity does not belong in the basement. And I was doing all the gestures, and then the audience started laughing, and then I was like, okay, I know I dance with my body when I speak.
Nice. Well, I haven't gone that far, but I do use my hands a lot. And somebody came up to me after a training the other day, and they said, "Do you know who you look like?" And I'm like, "No, who?" And they said, "Lucille Ball." Like, really? They're like, "You have facial features and the way your eyes." They're like, I'm like, "Wow, no one's ever told me that before." All right, cool. And then now I look at myself and I'm like, maybe I do. I don't know.
No, I love passion. I love passion. Where there's passion comes solutions, right? But I love what you just mentioned as well. People who are higher on the chain of command, who hold access to resources, right? Resources, opportunities, and when opportunities can look like promotions, education, right to vote, anything. And when we have the wrong people in these positions, it results in social justice being eliminated. Right. So my next question is, how can we truly ensure it, not just organizations, right? Even in school systems, I've had professors who have mistreated students, who have mistreated fellow colleagues. I've sat on boards where I've seen this kind of behavior. So how can we truly shift that, not shift, but enable a space and really ensure that people who hold a higher chain of command, who hold access to other people, do not hold this kind of behavior? And there's nothing wrong from being a people manager or C-suite to becoming an individual contributor. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a systemic thing, right? So one piece of it is the system. So wherever you are, you got to start looking at, I mean, look at this police brutality stuff that's going on right now. Like, that is a systemic issue that is everywhere, that needs to be addressed. It seems overwhelming, right? When you think about it, when I make it sound so easy, people are like, it's not that simple. I'm not saying it's easy. It's difficult, but that's what needs to happen. But here's the other thing. Okay. So people don't get to that point unless it's gone on for a while. So I call it the progression of behavior. So if somebody said something to you, right? If I didn't know you and you said something to me and it was something like rude and I didn't like it, maybe you were trying to be funny even. So you didn't have bad intention, but it bothered me. I need to be empowered to speak up about that and do it in the right way, right? It's got to be done respectfully, calmly, but to be able to say, you know what, Mila, you know, maybe you didn't mean that, but that's kind of crossing some boundaries for me. It's making me feel uncomfortable. To be able to speak up about these things, because if I don't speak up, then Mila's going to keep making that comment. She's going to keep engaging in that behavior without knowing it, right? Until it's going to get to the point where now it's going to impact me coming to work or me coming to school or me showing up, right? So we want to get people on board with speaking up. So everybody needs to be on that boat together to get comfortable to have their voice, right? Because if they don't, then it's going to become dismissive or abusive or bullying behaviors, and then it's a quick jump to illegal behavior.
Right. Right. No, I love that, having a voice out, and voice out even when it pertains to paychecks or inequity,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of people are so shy to have their voices being heard. And when we go back to the point and pillars of what is social justice, we spoke about distribution, access also to wealth, and that also pertains to distribution of wealth, right? Distribution of wealth is just not about being capitalistic, everyone for themselves, make America great again, go create your American dream.
Yeah.
But when you have a job and you don't have opportunities to either climb up the ladder, and I hate the term ladder.
Hierarchy.
I want to break the ladder, like
Yeah, I know. Chain of command. I don't know.
yeah, like how about progression? Just progression.
Yeah.
Why do we limit when there's limitation of distribution of wealth in society, at workplaces, wherever, right? Even business owners in the USA, it depends. I was watching a documentary. What's that show called? Patriot Act by Hassan Minaj. And he was interviewing different weed business owners. And two business owners, they are African American men, and they were sharing even to get a license, they had to jump so many different hoops to get a license.
Yeah.
So when we talk about distribution of wealth, it just does not happen at the workplace, right?
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, there's plenty of statistics to back that up. And that's why I think it's important that when you are a vulnerable, when you are a marginalized person and you do get a seat at the table, that you make space for other people. Be an ally. So there's more than just being a mentor. Okay. I think we need to go past that point, because a lot of people will sit there and give you advice and be a mentor. We need to go past that. And I say this to anybody out there that can help other people get to that table. Create space for other voices, right? So be a sponsor. Actively bring that person to the table. Be someone that is going to amplify people's voices, like encourage people. Like I always tell people, like, you say that you want to help. How can you help? Here's how you can help. It doesn't make space for people. It's not threatening. There's this view that people have that is going to take away a piece of my pie. That's not going to happen. Nobody's taking anything away from you, right? It's just distributing it fairly for people that may not be able to get there. That's what you can do, right? So stop being a mentor. Be more than that.
Oh my God, I love you. If I can hug you and kiss you like on the cheeks, like
virtual hugs.
Oh my God. I love your mind and your heart. Yes. Oh my God, Sejal, you're speaking my language so much. It's like I truly believe in being a sponsor and not being a mentor. Right? It's like I've had so many mentors in my life. And I have never learned, I should not say I've never learned, I've only learned like 1% from my mentors. And it's those sponsors are the ones who have truly lifted me up to go above and beyond and push my limit. And you're so right. Mentors are so quick to giving advice, sitting from a space of, oh, you go do it. Because they don't understand you. And some mentors I've experienced in my corporate 10 years too, they gatekeep opportunities from you. So
that's right. Yeah, it happens. It happens. You know that. It happens to everybody. I mean, I've had so many people want to mentor me, give me advice, and I'm like, but what are you doing to help me get to the decision maker? Bring me to the table. You know, it's like I joke around about this on LinkedIn. You know, I say this a lot. I've probably gotten more people work than myself because I feel like if I can get this person an opportunity to have this conversation, let me introduce them. At the end of the day, it's going to be that person that has to sell themselves or offer what they offer, right? But give them an opportunity, get them there. And that's part of it is when we don't have that opportunity, we fight super hard. And then when we're finally there and then we're having to deal with injustice, we sit there and we put up with it or we take it or we walk away from it and we don't stand up for ourselves. And that's the other thing is we need to speak up. We need to speak up when there's injustice that's done. We need to speak up about that, right? I mean, you saw that this thing happened with me in LinkedIn, and I'll just quickly end with that, you know, and I felt that I was wronged. And I really thought hard my life. I mean, this really impacted me. It hit me to the core. It was something that I had worked really hard for.
Mm-hmm.
And they falsely accused me of using automation software, which I never did.
Mm-hmm.
And then they banned me for over a month off of LinkedIn for something I never did. To
Mm-hmm.
this day, they haven't compensated me. They haven't done anything aside put me back on LinkedIn to rectify the situation. But I spoke up about it and I fought my way back and I'm
Mm-hmm.
back on there. But most people, they would have walked away from it.
Right.
And I was like, no, man, I have worked for 2 years building my business. There's no way you're going to take this from me. I'm going to fight. If you don't give it to me, I'll fight even harder. But I'm not going to, we need to speak up. This is the thing. Just because we're marginalized or just because there's injustice that's going on, it doesn't mean, but again, it's got to be done appropriately. It's got to be done in the right manner. Firing
Right.
back, using, putting people down and engaging in those behaviors that we're saying we don't want other people to engage in is not the way to do it.
Right. Right. No, I love what you just said. Uh, that's why I started my live shows. That's why I started my podcast because it's like I got so bloody tired of getting rejected and hearing the narrative of you are not a great speaker, you're not a confident speaker, you're
Mhm.
not what we're looking for. And that creates a very dominant monolingual culture, right?
Mhm.
If you're truly advocating for diversity, well, what does diversity look like? Does diversity look like a very singular concept and picture of how a public speaker should look like,
Mhm.
sound like, and what confidence should look like? I
Yeah.
think that's BS
Yeah,
because
I agree.
a software engineer can be a female, a soft spoken
Mhm.
female,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely.
Speak confidently in a very different manner
Yeah.
and yet get the message across and impact millions of people.
That's right. It's a stereotype. It's all
Right.
about stereotypes. And we, again, it's normal that we do that. But again, when you start not giving access, not giving opportunity, not giving resources to people because of your stereotypes, now we have a problem.
Yeah.
You can think whatever you want up there, but when you start acting on it and now it's giving disadvantages to people, right? I mean, it happens everywhere. And it's not, and then here's the thing. Some people think, well, I'm black, so it's happening to me. I'm transgender. It happens to everybody. And that's why I keep saying we all have to be a part of this effort to
Right.
bring justice because look, Me Too movement. Everything was about sexual harassment. Then we have the whole LGBTQ community fighting for their rights. I mean, we fought along and we made some progress. So I'm not being Debbie Downer. We've made a lot of process on everything that we've done, right?
Mhm.
But we've got a long way to go.
Yeah. I love what you just mentioned about everyone is fighting for their rights, and that falls under social justice. Even if that right looks like gender equity, paycheck equity, right? Marriage equity, same sex
Yeah,
marriage equity, whatever it looks like, everyone is fighting for
yeah,
their own rights, and that falls under social justice. And I want to relate this with everyone listening out there is your rights, right? When you're advocating and fighting for your rights, why not become a sponsor for each other? To
yeah.
your point,
That's
right, Sejal? It's we are seeing a lot of communities coming together, like creating partnership with the Asian community, with the Black community, with Brown community, with the Black community, and we need to start creating partnerships where
that's right.
we sponsor each other. I don't want to like say allyship because like allyship can look different as well. Like I've had too many allies in my corporate career where allies look like, okay, I will support you if you support me.
Yeah, that's
Partnership
not
is
yeah, that's kind of not, I think we can do what we can control, right? And so, for example, I'm putting on a workshop on June 10th, 12th, sorry, on 50 Shades of Brown about anti-blackness in South Asian communities, because I understand that issue. I've gone through it growing up. I know that's an area that people are going to find what I'm saying credible, know that I'm speaking from experience and here to make a difference and open the eyes of the South Asian community. Say, look, this doesn't mean you're bad people. This is the narrative we heard growing up, that we heard about this. So if you're not aware of it, you might be in these higher level positions and you might not give somebody the resources or the promotion without even being aware of it. So let's start the conversation. So I'm trying to start a conversation. Do I have all the answers? No. Do I know it's a one size fits all for everybody? There isn't one. That's why I think we have to keep in mind when we talk about social justice, it's human justice.
right.
It doesn't matter. It's all about humanity. And so it doesn't matter who you're seeking the justice for. It's all about the fact that we're human and we want to be able to navigate these spaces. And the only way we can do that, Mila, the only way is if we understand each other.
Right.
If I don't have a Black person explaining to me what they go through. I mean, now I can see it on LinkedIn on videos. I can watch 10 different videos that have happened in the last 2 months. I can see what they go through, and I can not understand it. I'm still not in their shoes, but I can do what I can to help that community. So I'm choosing to do it in this workshop, right? I wish I can go and do a lot more. I can only do what I can control. But if everybody does that, and that's the point, if you do what you're doing, which is so amazing, and thank you so much for having me on your show and allowing me to share my voice, Mila, keep up the great work, because
Thank you.
you're allowing us to talk about these very important issues. So in whatever way we can, if we all do that and we all commit to doing that, it can work. It can absolutely work. And I truly believe that. And I think that's the only way it can work is if we all get on that boat together and commit that I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your color is, but we're going to commit to doing what we can to make this better for all of us. It's a short life, man. I mean, it's on tomorrow. Why waste it?
That's so true. That's so true. My parents would always tell me, are you sure that you're going to wake up tomorrow and be alive? Or are you positive? Do you know that you're going to be alive in 10 hours time? We don't.
We don't know that.
There's a comment from one of our viewers from Twitter, human beings being human.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And as you know, when we explore culture and rethink culture, we explore it from a three-pronged perspective. Whatever happens at home happens in our society, schools, and workplaces. And we do not end the show without solutions in the form of actions, right? So what kind of small progressions can we as a society take to really promote social justice that promotes equity and diversity, Sejal?
Look, my one tip, okay, to everybody that's listening to this is don't be a bystander. Do not be a bystander. Look, nothing else. If you can't do anything else, that's the one thing I ask for the commitment is don't be a bystander. I'm not saying that you get involved and you put yourself in harm's way. No, I am not saying that. And I don't want anybody to get off or stop listening to me thinking I should stand up to that bully or I should stand up to that police officer. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is don't be a bystander, meaning do something about it. What that something is depends on the situation, the context. That could be a phone call. That could be reporting it. That could be writing a letter. That could be spreading a video. That could be raising awareness. Whatever that is, do something about it. Don't just let it slide thinking it's not my business. It's not my problem, because it is everyone's business. When somebody is suffering from injustice, it is all of our business. Trust me when I tell you that, because it's going to come back and it's going to impact us in bigger ways later if we don't speak up about it right now. And Mila's like, we need to get together for a glass of wine when this is all over, right?
No, I absolutely love it, because this is something that I advocate for. It becomes our social responsibility.
That's right.
It's our responsibility to ensure that each of us are looked after, right? Like yes, we all have different melanin or lack melanin, right? But we all have a beating heart. We all breathe in oxygen. It's not like you breathe in helium and survive. No, like we all breathe, have a beating heart. We all have blood. Even though we all look different, sound different, think differently, we all want to be loved.
That's
And love looks the same. So I love that you came on Rethink Culture, Sejal. Thank you for coming on board and sharing with us what social justice looks like, how social justice is an integral part of our lives, that could be at home, in society, in the education system, work, in our political system. And it becomes a social responsibility of all of us to speak out, voice out, and lift each other up. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Folks, don't forget to subscribe on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Well, LinkedIn has not approved my live yet. They will soon. So the handle is Mila Deschamps. Give it a like, subscribe, and of course, click on the bell so you will get notified when our next show comes out. So toodles, everyone. Have a fantastic Wednesday.
Thank you. Bye.